Welcome to this month's Shofur podcast. Shofur is a technology company that simplifies charter bus transportation for Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, weddings, and film production companies, getting people where they need to be. Each month, we look at different topics that impact the transportation industry, as well as current trends in business, technology, and the arts. This week, we are excited to be joined by Amy Osaba. Amy is the founder, owner, and lead designer for Amy Osaba Designs, based here in Atlanta. The company offers floral design services for weddings, day of coordination for weddings, and creative direction for, you guessed it, weddings. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. You and I met for the first time about a month ago. We were both working a wedding, weren't we, down in Florida?
Yeah, that was a fun one.
that was Inlet Island in Florida. I was playing with Yacht Rock Schooner, and
awesome band, so much fun.
Thank you. And we and I remember the venue too. It had kind of like whitewashed walls, right? Like white interior.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, it was pretty. It was a huge, vast space to work with, but yeah, in two separate like rooms, I guess. But I think it worked out. You guys certainly made it fun. So the clients were happy, and that's what we're in the business for, I guess, right?
I guess the floral designer, which is the hat you wore for that wedding. Maybe you did more. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I did the full creative direction, event design, and planning for all of that.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I know. Yeah. We do full event design, wedding planning, and creative direction. You know, the word wedding planner sort of has its own connotations, which I fully embrace, but we do a lot more than that because we take more of an artistic kind of approach and, try to make it fun for the clients and, planning weddings and executing it.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
I didn't see you walking around with a clipboard yelling at anybody or anything. I didn't see that. What I saw was a gorgeous room. It was amazing. It's beautiful.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. I have a really good team that helps us execute things, a little differently than a regular wedding planner. I've been doing this for almost 13 years, so you get used to it.
Well, how can you talk more about that? I mean, how do you differentiate? How do you try to be different or provide a different experience than other providers would provide, I guess?
Well, just to give you a little background, Amy Osaba Design started about 13 years ago in the basement of my house of really just doing floral design. And I was completely self-taught, I didn't have any formal training. Before that, in my previous life, I was a professional ballet dancer. And so I've always been like the artistic one. So, and, I did a little bit of wedding planning with this lady a long time ago. So she kind of taught me that back end stuff about weddings. And over the course of the years, it just really evolved into more of sort of my artistic expression. And so we do not traditional florals. They're a little bit more of a artistic driven with taking into consideration lines and movement and things like that. And trying to be leaders on Pinterest and not being a follower, trying to set new trends and, exciting things that kind of stand out. So while we always, our bread and butter's always been the floral design, in doing weddings, I would come to the event and put my beautiful flowers on these linens that were really ugly and other elements of the event. I'm like, I would have never done it like that. Or, it was not a whole lot more money. You could have stepped it up a notch and had this. So when speaking to clients, I started kind of putting that out there, and people just kind of took on that, or they kind of bit that we did the wedding planning and the event design. And I think the thing that makes us sort of stand out is my team tries to make it an experience for the clients rather than us dictating what they're going to do. We consider it as a partnership and working with the clients for it to be an extension of who they are.
Yeah.
but really making it a high-end luxury, exceptional, stress-free event for our clients because it's a special time in their life.
And it's the most important day of her life.
Absolutely.
Right.
And
it's
so
that one day when
stressful.
it's that one day when it's all about her, right? And
Exactly.
That's the way it ought to be.
Yep.
And
But not only the day, there's like a year of planning that goes into it that you have to kind of make it be fun for them. So,
right.
So that's sort of how we stand out a little bit, I think.
Well, your website uses the word asymmetrical, and I thought that was really cool. I know what asymmetrical means, but I wasn't sure what it meant in terms of, wedding floral design.
Yeah. Well, I think what, symmetrical is everything's exactly the same. Yeah. On both sides, it's even. Yeah. But asymmetrical lends itself to your instincts. It makes sense, but you don't know why, but it's balanced. So, I think I'm trying to get people to understand that things can be a little bit outside of the box, but still be extremely elegant and make sense and feel a sense of balance. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm sure that once they buy into that, then I would imagine two things have happened. Well, three things have happened. One is that they are giving their guests a wedding that is unlike anything that their guests have seen before, which I think every bride wants to do deep down inside. Is wants their wedding to be special. I say that
to all of my clients. Yeah, that's exactly what I say.
Right.
I try to sell them on. You don't want your guests to walk in and be like, yeah, I saw that last weekend. You want your guests to walk in and be like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I suppose the second thing is that you've gained their trust. Once they buy into that and they go, oh, Amy's right, then they trust you. And then I guess the next part is that they say, well, Amy, what else do you have an opinion on here? What band should we get?
Yeah, you sound like you've been one of my clients. So it is a really neat thing because I feel like now where the brand is and where the business is, that most clients come to us because they want our design eye and our expertise and our resources within the industry. But I did have to work towards that. But I think one of the most important things in any business, small business, large business, is how you keep business is people. And by making them feel like they're your only clients, making them feel like you can trust me, I have your best interest at heart, and I want this to be awesome for you while keeping budgetary things in mind, So, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's a big trust thing. And most of the time I feel fortunate now that most clients seek us out because they want that and they see what kind of work we consistently produce.
And I think that social media has probably helped you. It's almost a tool for you because I checked out your Pinterest page, and I'm not a Pinterest guy, but man, I looked at that and I was like, wow, I want to get married. But again, renew my vows. That's what I meant.
Yeah, we can do that next weekend if you want.
Man, you know what? You and I were talking before we started recording here, but I got married 2 weeks ago, and man, we cleaned up so good that we have been joking with our family that we're going to renew our vows real soon, just so we can get another round of gifts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Why not?
Yeah. But what was funny is, and our thing was really low budget, not our first marriages. We were really keeping it low key. But what was fascinating to me is that my wife, we really struggled to find an ally in terms of flowers. It was really hard. And I'm a dude, so I didn't get it. I was like, they're flowers. Yeah. But she was like, no, you don't understand. And that's why it was, I saw the energy that is around floral design for a wedding, and I didn't get it until I saw them, and I was like, oh, because it literally brings life to the room.
I know it does. Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting and cool connotations and sentimental things around flowers and what it does with your senses and everything. But it's interesting because there's flowers, but then there's an artistic design element to it, which I think there's a really big movement within the industry leaning more towards that, rather than it just being like, I call them roundy moundies. It's just not our style. That is a lot of other people's styles.
Yep.
But just creating interest and the thing I love about the flowers, and they really are my passion, and the color, but it's just like the texture, and every single one is its own little work of art. And, you know, it's just fun. And it's fun to see people's eyes. Like when I know I've done a good job is when I hand the bride her bouquet and she cries. That's terrible. But if she cries, then I'm like, okay, she's going to love everything else, you know.
Does it?
Not necessarily.
Do you like to do the bouquet? Is the bouquet first? Is that kind of the process? I mean, is that where you like to start with the bride? You know,
well, in terms of giving that to her, yes, on the day of. That's the first thing that she sees, and it's indicative of if she's going to be happy of the rest of the day. But, yeah, so there's a whole big process to it. But that's probably another day, another podcast. But in talking about the social media, you know, the Pinterest and everything, was that the question you were asking me? I think I went on a rabbit hole there.
Well, it seems to me that as your work is visual, and so something like Pinterest would be not only a great way for you to demonstrate an idea to a client, like, well, here's something I did for somebody last year. I'm thinking something similar to this, but it's, you know, but then it's probably, you know, you get leads for, you know, people go, oh my gosh, you did that, you know? Yeah.
Well, it is interesting, because I did start my business before social media really started over 13 years ago. I mean, Facebook might have just been started, but there was no Instagram, nothing like that. So I literally had to go out and shake hands and do network in the old-fashioned way, which I still think is very valid. But it's neat how Pinterest and social media has really changed. Like, I don't do any outside marketing, and I feel like my business has continued to grow every year. But the neat tool about Pinterest is actually in my initial talks with my clients, I ask them if they have a Pinterest board, because that's the first thing that brides go do. They start looking for inspiration.
Sure.
And I ask to see it because it will give me, I can look at their Pinterest board and know if it's a good fit for us or not. And, you know, because that's important. I don't want to struggle and argue and like have butt heads over design if they're trying to force us into doing something that is not really true to our brand and what we do.
Right.
But I do feel like
Mounties.
I have that luxury now.
Right.
Yeah, no roundy mounties.
No roundy mounties.
But I do feel like I have that luxury now. But in the past, you still have business. You still have to make money.
Yeah.
But you just don't ever put those out into the social media world. You just put the things out there that you want to come back to you.
Right.
But the Pinterest it's a really good tool for me to communicate visually with my clients. And then, you know, Instagram, we get so many leads from Instagram. Instagram is its own beast that I find extremely interesting. And, you know, it's great for marketing and just putting your work and what you do out there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. Social media has changed the game a lot.
Well, yeah, technology. Oh my gosh. Do you remember? Well, I won't ask you this question. I won't put you on the spot. But I remember, you know, life before cell phones, and I often ask myself, how the heck did we even coordinate where to be at a certain?
Oh my God.
You know, in high school, when we were going to go have a party, how did we like all get to that place? Without
you had to call and be like, tell me which turn to take. I'm with you. The cell phone thing is insane. I remember in high school, people talking about technology moving forward, and I tell my kids this. I remember when they said in the year 2010, or everyone is going to have a personal handheld device. And I was like, whatever.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
Right.
And it did. It happened.
That's Captain Kirk. Only Captain Kirk has a handheld device. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Beam me up. But anyway, it's just, interesting how technology, it still blows my mind. I feel like I was in that little 5-year window where I didn't really learn technology, but all the girls, a lot of my girls that work for me know so much about it.
Right.
While I don't really know that much about technology, but then I go and talk to my mom, who knows nothing. So It's just funny because I feel like to my girls that work for me, I'm like the mom. I'm like, can you help me do this? I don't know how. So this is funny.
Right.
Funny.
I'd like to think that we specialize in the higher the higher level thinking. The abstract thinking. There it is.
I agree.
There it is.
I agree. I'm the personality. I'll go out and woo people, but then you can do all of the spreadsheets and things.
Right. Tell me, I'm dying to know so you started off 13 years ago in your basement, and you're doing floral design, and I'm dying to know the origin of all this. How did you go from, I think you were with the Atlanta Ballet. That's what your website said, I think. Mm-hmm. Okay. So how do you go from a professional ballet dancer, which that's wicked cool in itself. That is another podcast.
Thanks.
But how do you go from that to, oh my gosh, this is how I'm going to make a living. This is really going to blow up. I have a gift that people are going to need again and again and again with this design and my creativity. Mm-hmm. Was there a moment when you were like, oh my gosh, this is going to work?
Yeah. And, this is kind of part of my story, if you will, I guess, that I use a lot in teaching with people that come to our workshops and they want to start their own business. And, because people have, especially creative people, they want to do something with what they're passionate about, with what they're, with what their gifts are. And a lot of times us as creative people, we don't know really how to manage that in a way that can sustain a business or, be profitable, I guess. But after I did ballet, I decided to retire because that lifestyle was way too hard. And I felt very fortunate that I got to live a dream or go and chase after a dream. I moved to New York City 3 days after high school and danced for about 10 years. After that, I moved back to Georgia to go to college, which is funny and it's funny because I'm not a student, but I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go to college. So I was going to Georgia State University, and then I re-met this guy who ended up becoming my husband. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to be a mom and have babies and stay at home and raise my children and all this. So that was my plan there for a little while. But I kind of on the side dabbled in doing people's parties and, doing flowers for things. So I knew I was good at that. My grandmother was a master gardener, so was my mom. So that was kind of always there. But had 3 babies. My husband at the time lost his job, his income. And so I was like, oh, well, maybe I can do this as sort of a sideline job until you get something. And ended up, it just started to take off.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually make money at this. And I did one bridal show, which I'll never do another one again. But it was, the big, huge ones in the conference centers. But it was a great experience, and it gave me some really good leads that, just kind of started word of mouth and grew gradually from there. And, ended up, I got divorced, and I always say that God knew I was going to need this. Yeah. And it just grew into what it is now. And, I support my family and was able to buy a house last year and for 2 years ago. And so I do think that I had a huge reason, a huge determination. I wanted to take care of my children and provide opportunities. That's a huge motivator.
It is. I nothing will get you focused like having kids to feed, right?
I know, exactly. And so I was like, I can't fail. And
all right,
so
failure
I was
is not an option.
Spinning my wheels. No way. I was definitely spinning my wheels. But then one of my, a girl came to intern with me who now owns her own creative consulting business because she literally changed the trajectory of my business.
Oh.
Anyway, so, that's a huge motivator. I was like, this can't fail. I love what I'm doing, but I had to figure out business principles and learn how to be self-sustaining. So anyway,
right.
Does that answer your question?
No, it does. It's so cool. And what I love about your story, Amy, is that it can't be easy to have your life shift that much. Oh my gosh, a few years ago I was dancing in New York, and now I'm a housewife in Atlanta. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's cool. But
Yeah,
but I've been around long enough to know that you can struggle to figure out, to kind of reinvent yourself, or more specifically to find where your value is. Where's my value? What do I?
Oh yeah.
And then when you got to feed kids, and that question becomes way more important, because it's value is an esoteric term, but suddenly it's got to be what's going to put money in my account.
Yeah.
And
that's why I do feel really fortunate to be able to pursue something that I absolutely love and create something new and unique, but also am able to take care of my kids and, provide them with opportunities and things. I do feel like that's rare. But, hard work will get you somewhere eventually.
Oh, man.
So
Yep.
I'm not saying it was easy all the time. Definitely. It's still not easy, but,
Sure.
if you're determined and have good work ethic, I think it'll always work out.
Right. And with something like weddings, the word of mouth is just tremendous. If you just do a great job for somebody, it was such an important day. They're just never going to forget you. I remember, so I've played in wedding. And I don't know that you and I have talked about this, but I've probably played, I'm going to say 500 to 600 weddings in my life. And if you don't mind, I'm going to give a shout out to the bands too, because I love them all. So that's US Beat and Atlanta Beat, all managed by my friend Chip Lunsford with Event Performance, and then Party Nation, which is owned by my friends Dean and Lisa Balkwill.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I've worked with every single one of those bands that you just mentioned.
Oh man. And then, of course, Yacht Rock Schooner, which is how you and I met, and Yacht Rock Review. I think I played a wedding with those bands.
Yeah.
And
so neat. So fun.
And I remember when I was young, I was in my 20s, and I had these dreams of writing film scores and being a rock star. And so to me, I kind of had a snotty attitude about the weddings, like, I'm just paying the bills, and this is this is lame. And then I got a little older, and I think now it's nice to have a little wisdom under your belt, because you have more context for it, and you're like, man, this is the most important day of their life. And now I'm just this sobby, emotional old guy up there, just crying while I'm playing the songs on their first dance. I mean, that energy is amazing. When somebody's getting married. And with floral design, I think it seems to me that you, Amy, and the work you do with floral design, that really defines their experience, especially when they first walk in the room, right? Or walk up to the ceremony. And they
it does make a difference in the room, or wherever they are. It's just a feeling, and it's also exceeding what their visions are. I think that's when people get excited, you probably have the same experiences on, especially weddings. People can be really particular, and you have to be like, look, I want you to have a good time. That's my goal. You can't micromanage me, because then you're not going to have the best experience.
Right.
If you let me do what I'm good at, then it's going to be an awesome experience for everybody. I mean, you get up there on the stage and you want to kill it for the crowd. So
right.
Yeah. It's
right. And it's
definitely a big responsibility, but it's also when you're good at something, it's going to be fun.
Right. And you have to have, I guess, the capital, I'll say, I guess, in the relationship, or even just your own chutzpah, to say, look, I'm telling you, this is going to be fantastic. Just trust me. Just trust me. This is going to be great. And that actually leads me to a question. So I didn't email this question to you, so you don't know about this one. But I've got someone on my staff here, and her name is Madeline, and she's getting married in April 2018, next April. Indoor wedding, 80 guests. And about 45 minutes ago, I said, Madeline, I'm going to get on this podcast with this, wedding design guru. Here's your chance to get, get a question answered. And she did. And she was kind of stressed out. She's like, oh my gosh, I got to think about what to ask her. So, so can I pass along Madeline's question for you? You're right. Okay, so Amy,
I hope I have the right answer. I'm nervous.
It's a podcast. Esteban can edit this out if we want.
Okay.
Yeah. You can get this wrong. There's no wrong answer.
No, I'm teasing.
Right. Okay. So what detail do you see clients get the most stressed out about, or just cause the most unnecessary stress in their minds, that they make a big deal out of, that ultimately, and you just know this because you do it for a living, on the day of the wedding, it's just not going to be as big of a deal as they think? And the example that Madeline used was ice sculptures. I hope her parents aren't listening. Maybe I'm making one of them mad right now, but Madeline doesn't really give a crap about the ice sculptures.
Right, yeah. That's hard to say. I think it's funny because every client has one of those, but that's not always the same thing.
Oh.
There is always something that's like, a little turn point, I guess. But I think what I try to get clients to understand about that, I don't know, I can't give you one single detail that is the thing. I have one client who the linens aren't that big of a deal to them, and the mom wants to use these, crappy linens. But I'm like, I'm always like the diplomat and trying to get everyone to kind of get on the same page about things. And then some people, like, the most important thing to them is food because they're foodies. And I feel like when you're focused in on one detail too much, it's like, in the grand scheme of that, like, they're focused on it, but the guests, they're not going to walk away being like, oh, the ice sculpture,
Right.
Even the flowers on the tables, the guests walk in and they see the whole room, and they're not going to every single arrangement and criticizing it or judging it or looking at it. It's more about you walk in and it's the whole feeling around the event. And some people get overly worked up about if there should be paper and menu on the table or if all the place cards should be there. And while I think all of the details together are important, I feel like getting way too focused on those things, sometimes you miss what the whole experience was really about. That did not answer her question, but I don't know. I mean,
I think you did. Well, I think that what I'm hearing is that there's always a little bit of compromise there, and probably with a creative person of your level, you can probably create that compromise in a way that none of them can imagine. Mom who's obsessed with the linens, and dad who's obsessed with the cocktails or something like that. Probably, I'm just going to guess, in most of these meetings, the only person who can synthesize all that into one thing is you, and that's why you're Amy Osaba, president and founder of Amy Osaba Designs.
I know, it's a very big title, but not really. I think, though, the parents have usually never planned a wedding. The bride and groom have never usually planned a wedding. And so it is my job to kind of be the voice of reason and to help them understand, within the context of their budget, what's the most impactful way to spend their budget. Like, for example, I will talk to clients about, they look at Pinterest and they don't know how much things cost.
Right.
And they're showing me all these pictures. And I'm like, look, I love everything that you're talking about, but within the context of your budget, I think what I always talk about a lot in meetings and with our design girls is there's impactful moments, but for the impactful moments to be impactful, you have to have quiet moments. So we're all about editing and making those things very impactful rather than throwing more and more and more flowers or more and more stuff on the table. So I really try to educate the families on, okay, I get that flowers are very important to you, but your mom and dad doesn't want to spend this much money. So let's do half of the tables with less pretty arrangements and the other ones with like a ton of candles on it, so that, each table doesn't have this little teeny tiny thing on it where there's those impactful moments. So
I totally get what you're saying. Amy, that's so asymmetrical.
It's so asymmetrical.
It's so asymmetrical.
I know.
Yeah. But I see that.
Really it's just getting them to understand what's more important for their budget, and they don't have to spend all this ridiculous money on things that don't matter to them. So,
Right.
sort of an education process along the way.
Well, yeah. And I'd imagine that, and I've played a lot of high dollar weddings, I guess there's a danger that the more money you spend, the more that you risk not being in the moment on the day of your wedding. You know?
Yeah.
I would imagine, and I'll have to ask Madeline about this when we get done here. I wonder, because she has 80 guests, and I wonder what is the threshold when it's time to get a wedding coordinator. So I got married 2 weeks ago, and we had 16 guests. So I think it was safe to say we didn't need a wedding creative designer. But when is the threshold when it's like, okay, ma'am, you really are going to have to get some help with this?
Well, I think that depends on, kind of like what you said, on how much money you're going to spend and how many details are going to be involved in your day. Even if people are coming to us only about flowers, I still ask who their day of coordinator is, because there's a lot of logistics. I think 85 is a good number. It just depends on if they're having a caterer and a floral designer and any music. You want somebody, not necessarily always through the process, but especially on the day of, to manage all of that for you. So, like you said, they can be in the moment and not worry about, is the band here? Is the cake there? Or when do we do this? Or when do we do that? They can just literally sit and relax and let me take over prompting the person that's going to do the toast and making sure that the right music's playing and just creating the ambiance, creating that environment for them to relax and enjoy and not have to worry about all of the little details. I'm taking that off of their plate.
Right. If you're worried about the trains running on time, during your wedding day, you're not enjoying your wedding.
Right. And it really, most 99% of the time, 100% of the time, actually, I think. And I feel very confident that most of our clients are like, that was the best money that I spent. Because not just us, although I do think we do a really exceptional job with diplomatically maneuvering people from one environment to another, but just creating that experience and the flow of the evening so it's comfortable for their guests, because they're making a huge investment, and you don't want it to derail, so to speak. But I'm not sure if I'm using your phrase correctly, but it's like they're buying the opportunity to have more quiet moments. I think I'm using your words, but differently than you meant them, to enjoy their day and just be like, oh my gosh, that's my daughter. Oh my gosh, that's my son. This is so cool. Man. And just taking the stress off of them a little bit,
I have to share the one tip that I give everybody who asks me about wedding stuff. In fact, I had a nephew that just got married. And the advice, just because, and I'm sorry to hijack your podcast, Amy, but I'm not sure when we're going to do a wedding one again, so I want to get this in. The advice that I love to give people about getting married is this: if you've decided to have a band and you have songs that you're using as your first dances, then have the band play those songs. Have the band go to the trouble to rehearse the song and play it, because and I've seen it both ways. The energy in the room when that bride and groom is dancing their first song together and it's being played on an iPod, or an iPhone over the speakers while the band is just standing there, that energy is lame. It's way lamer than if the band is playing that song, which is arguably the most important song of the night, and they're playing it live. And I have felt the difference in both energies, and it's no question. Have your band learn your first song and have them perform it live while you do that dance. I know it's a little petty thing, but it's not petty. It's huge at these rooms. Like
I agree.
Oh, man.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you on that. Yep, I just had this conversation with a client the other day, because they don't want to stand there dancing for the entire song, so they think, we'll just play the iPod and only play like the first, the first part of it. Yeah. And I'm like, but you're losing that cool momentum.
Yeah.
So,
And it gets a little awkward. You know, when just that music, I don't know. It's weird. It's just, it gets a little awkward. Everybody's kind of looking around like, all right, you know, now
what do I do now?
Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I think it's so important for the clients to, I always tell my clients, pick vendors that you love. Somebody that you love their work, because then you're not going to have to micromanage them throughout. And then don't worry about a lot of those little details so much, because you're not going to remember them. The whole point is you're getting married and it's going to be fun. But if you hire good vendors, like a great band, which is huge, one of the most important things for a wedding, I think. Yeah. Because they can make it or break it. Yeah. You know, if it's a lame band playing like Violent Femmes because they're a bar band that their friend told them about, I'm like, that is not a wedding. No. Yep. You know what I mean? I've had plenty of clients who have said, well, we have a friend that plays in bars. I'm like, that's different. They don't know how to work a wedding.
It's a whole different thing. It's a different attitude. The bands that do it best that I've worked with are the ones that they have all the tools and skills and gifts that a rock star has, but they're but here's the big one, is that but when they're on stage using those gifts, they understand that it's not about them. It's not about them. It's about they're serving the family, and they are packing that dance floor, you know, with songs that the family wants to hear, and that's going to pack the dance floor. And it's so important. And
creating a memory for the family. Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm gonna use that. That's true.
Come on.
That's very true.
Come on. Well, I'm gonna take quiet moments from you. I'm gonna use that one. Right.
In design, it's nice to have the negative space so that you can appreciate the details of the impactful moments. Does that make sense?
Oh, I wish some of our web designers were here, because they would be nodding their heads furiously. They'd be like, yeah, we've been telling you that.
I know. Yeah, I know. But it has to be well designed so it doesn't feel like a blank space. They're like, what? That doesn't make sense.
Right.
It just has to be asymmetrical.
I love it. Asymmetrical floral design. That's the word of the day. And of course, we need buses for weddings. We need buses. We have to have charter vehicles. We have to get the people.
Oh, heck yeah.
Right.
Oh.
Hey,
transportation is key. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Folks got to get from the church to the reception. And so they need a charter bus or a minibus. I'm doing a plug here because we're a bus company.
Oh, no, I think that's great.
Come on.
I was very excited to meet you guys. I'm going to be employing your services a lot because, having a reliable transportation service. I had one wedding one time and this is a company that I used to use all the time. And one of the buses did not go back to the church for their second round to bring the guests over they left. He just left.
Oh, no.
And, and so all the guests, I had to get Ubers to bring them all. It was ridiculous.
Oh, my gosh.
I never used that company ever again after that. So reliable transportation. And even with us in wedding planning, I use and reuse vendors that I know go above and beyond. And not just like, well, I didn't get paid for that. Because if you go above and beyond, even if one event didn't go exactly as planned, it's going to show that you're willing to work in circumstances, because in weddings, things never happen always exactly. There's always something.
Right. It's a little, that is part of the excitement, is that you don't know exactly how it's going to go. Yep.
Yeah, and you just have to go with the flow. So, well, I'm excited about using your buses because they're beautiful and they look nice and professional, and not some sort of janky trolley something that I'm not going to use any names, but any of those party buses, my clients, I don't let them use that. I'm like, that's tacky.
That's
Sorry.
Right. Only pretty buses at our clients' weddings.
Yeah. Exactly. So, yeah. Well, transportation is important.
It sure is. Well, Amy, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being on our show.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It was super fun hanging out and talking to you today.
Amy Osaba is the founder and owner of Amy Osaba Designs. Amy Osaba Designs strives to create unique and captivating environments for clients who are desiring a personalized and creative approach. The team collaborates to curate an experience that is a direct reflection of their clients' individual values, tastes, and desires, weaving together a meaningful details and thoroughly executed design to exceed their expectations. You can learn more at www.amyosaba.com.
Thanks for the plug. I appreciate it.
You got it. And folks, we'll be back in a few weeks with more news on transportation and technology. Don't forget to subscribe to the Shofur podcast on iTunes, Android, or other sites so you don't miss it. Thanks to Shofur for sponsoring this podcast. Shofur is the most trusted bus reservation service in North America. The company currently serves more than 100 cities nationwide and has logged more than 5 million miles with no accidents to help more than 1 million customers get from point to point faster. Looking for your next transportation need to be fulfilled? Contact us today at 1-800-436-8719. Have a great day, folks.